Pops, in 1980, you connected up with the 305th Bomb Group Memorial Association, and I know you've been very active in that since 1980. Can you tell us more?
To start off with, that was after I retired, and I was working part-time at North End Sales. And one day, on the intercom, my call take a phone call. I picked up the phone, and I heard a voice say, "Are you standing up or sitting down?" I said, "I'm sitting down." "Who's this?" And he says, "This is Dave Nagel." It struck me, I knew the name right off, but I was so surprised that, anyway, it was a big surprise. And he had found me found my name, and found that I lived in Highland, and he found the name of Lukach in Highland. He called, he had to get my sister-in-law Peggy, and so she gave him the phone, where I worked, and he called me, and he said that they'd been having reunions for 5 years at that time, and they were just making plans to return to England in September of that year, which was just a couple months away, and asked if I would be interested in joining the group. So I said sure. So I sent in my money to make the reservations for Mary and myself, and we were to meet at the Kennedy Airport, with the rest of the ones flying to England, where it happened to be about 200 of us that went. Anyway, when I went to the airport, Dave was the only person there that I knew, because I didn't remember very many people that I met while I was in service over there in England. And so we went to England and enjoyed the reunion. We were at the Cambridgeshire Hotel outside of Cambridge, England, and from there we went to the American Air Cemetery at Cambridge, and some other service. We went, dedicated a plaque to a church in Shelveston, which is 700 years old, and we had provided funds to rebuild their church tower. And I came back, and at first I didn't get too involved because Mary was, the next year the reunion was in San Antonio, Texas, and Mary and I made plans to go to Texas and make a 3-week trip out of it. And so when we started out on the trip, we hadn't gone even as far as Port Jervis, and Mary had no idea where we were going, what we were going to do. And after that trip was spending 24 hours a day with her, I realized that something was wrong. We had to take care of it. That's another part of the story. Anyway, that was my second reunion. The third and fourth reunions that I should have gone to were in Orlando and Milwaukee. Of course, I couldn't go because I was taking care of Mom. And then the next one I remember going to was 1984, when we had a reunion in Denver, Colorado. Mom was in the nursing home, and I felt that she was being taken care of well enough so that I could leave make that trip. And then the next year the reunion was in Philadelphia, and I invited the whole family there. Irene wasn't married at the time, but Mary Lou and Eddie were there with the 3 children. And during the course of our meeting there, Dave said he wanted to nominate me for 3rd vice president, and I didn't really think I was capable of, being an officer in any organization. But that night I sat in my room, and I realized, I said to myself, well, the motto of this group is can do. And I says, how can I, as a member of a can do group, say I can't do? So I accepted the nomination, was elected, and then from there I went to second vice president, first vice president, and well, when I was third vice president, we had our first reunion on the West Coast, and not having anything to keep me home, I went out and helped make arrangements to have the reunion at the Marriott in Anaheim, California, and it ended up to be the reunion where we had the most members attend. Of course, we never really counted just the members, we counted the members and guests. I think we had something like 624 people at our banquet, including Curtis LeMay, who was chief of the Air Force and retired. You know, he was also, when he was just a colonel, he was our first commander of the 305th Bomb Group when they moved from their training place in Salt Lake City to England to start bombing missions. Anyway, I had the pleasure of meeting Curtis LeMay then, and sitting at the head table having a conversation with his wife during the dinner, and my picture taken with Curtis, and after that was over, I had to stay an extra day at the Marriott in Los Angeles Airport, LAX Airport, and I was sitting there in the lobby. I saw a young lady playing the piano, and she sounded so good and looked so pleasant that I went over and talked to her, and it ended up being very appreciative of her music. And anyway, that's another story. But
what was her name?
Her name was Sally Harmon, and she was a new mother. She had a little baby that was less than a year old, and she was an excellent piano player. And as proven later on, she began recording and selling tapes and things, and which I bought everything she ever, just about everything she ever sold. And even to this day, I still get stuff for her. And I was thinking the other day that maybe I ought to give her a call and tell her that I'm still surviving. But anyway.
So after Anaheim, where did you go and what happened after that?
Well, after Anaheim the next year, the reunion was in Dallas, Texas, and by that time Mom was gone, and I drove to Texas by myself, stopping in around Nashville to visit my nephew Jimmy Stewart and his wife Grace, and then went on to Dallas. It wasn't anything eventful at that reunion, and I stopped on the way back to Jimmy and Grace again, and Gracie was working at the post office in Nashville, so on the way back they came with me to Nashville, and she got me a room in a hotel where she stayed when she didn't want to go back home. And we went that night. We went to the Grand Ole Opry, first we went during the day. We did go to the Grand Ole Opry and the big hotel, and had dinner in the atrium there, and enjoyed the music, and just enjoyed the whole building. And then in the evening we had tickets to go to what was then the Ralph Emery show, who had a show on the Nashville Network, and enjoyed that show. And I have a tape of it somewhere, and many other tapes of the Nashville show. But anyway, that's getting away from the 305th.
Yeah, long ways away.
It's all related to it. If I didn't belong to the 305th, I'd never done it.
Would have ended up in Nashville, yeah.
And of course, that was also the time that I had the Eastern Airlines get up and go passport, which meant if I bought $1,000 ticket, I could travel as much as I wanted all year long for that price without, all I had to do was, write out my ticket and take it, send it in and go wherever I wanted. So I was able to travel to Florida, and New Orleans, and California, and all kinds of places, just mostly keep busy doing things for the 305th. Yeah.
So that was the Texas reunion, and now you stepped up the ladder and became president and all, so
oh yeah, well,
where'd you end up with that?
In 1988 we had our reunion in Washington, D.C., where I was installed as, president. And while in Washington, D.C., being president and working as co-president with the outgoing president, Ridge Kemp, we both had the opportunity to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier, and get to see some things there that in Washington area, and but I always consider that one of the highlights, because I don't think there's too many people that ever get the opportunity to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. Of course, I'm getting southern now too.
Well, I know too, along the way, aside from the reunions, the 305th has taken you to at least one, if not two, different museums that are related to the 305th that you visited, and where are those?
Well, let me finish the 88 reunion first.
Okay.
After the reunion in Washington was over, we had a group of about 120 that went back to England again, and this time we stayed in Bedford, and we saw the church again, had some services there, went back to the base, and of course we met the dignitaries of the town, all this, and I have pictures of myself with the dignitaries and so forth and so on. And I had met some people when we were over there in 1980, and I got to see them again, and became close friends with some of them, and some of them even later on came to our reunions every year, and came back home. And the next year, being president, I was involved in choosing a location, and since we had set up a plan to have the reunions first on the East Coast, then the Central and the West Coast, it was time to go to the West Coast again. Even though it was far away, I was president, although I would have liked it, near to home. But anyway, I went out and made the trip out there. Originally, we were planning to go to Seattle, and I met Ridge Kemp there and a couple other of the members, and we checked out all the hotels in Seattle, but we couldn't come up with any agreement with, as far as price we could handle and accommodations that we wanted. So Ridge said to me, he says, on the way up I stopped in Portland at a Marriott, and there seemed pretty nice. He says, why don't you check that out? So I flew down to Portland, checked that out and liked it, and made the initial arrangements to have our reunion there, where it finally did end up, and it turned out to be one of the best reunions we had. Especially the women really liked it, because at that time I realized that if it wasn't for the women, a lot of these men would never come to the reunion. So I wanted to honor them, and I designed a little pin to be made, and I boxed them up and gave each one of the attending ladies this little pin showing love or something like that. I forget what it was. But
had a rose on it or something,
yeah.
didn't it?
Anyway, the reunion was very good, and I'm always reminded how good it was when I see people since then. And then, let's see, after that I more or less stopped my most of my, well, go back again. Yeah, after the reunion, or wait a minute, I'm getting ahead of myself. You know, after I was installed in Washington, D.C., it was a practice of the 305th to have a mid-season meeting of all the officers to discuss things that needed attention. And I arranged to have this midterm meeting in Dayton, Ohio, because there were some things we wanted to do, make arrangements for at the Air Force Museum in Dayton. And there was also talk that time of starting another museum in Kokomo, Indiana, actually Peru, Indiana. And a couple of the members, or one of the members that lived in the area, had worked with B-17. They had the air moving from one place to another, and they had an airfield where they had different airplanes on display. And so I made arrangements to have all of our members that were attending the meeting go there and spend some time and get all the information.